When the people from Coral, the Krogman family, 2 or 3 of those boys used to come. One of them was a truck driver, and 3 of them were farmers, and one of them was a pretty good farmer and had 500 or 600 acres of potatoes. The truck driver would come by my mother and father's house, and Leon would stop off at my folks' house and have supper. And he was, I don't mean he was there every week, but in the course of a year, he'd probably stop by and drop around 5 or 6 times in a year. And my dad and he were fairly close. And there was another boy who was of his generation that he was close with. So there was a fair amount of social interchange between the families. One of the uncles in Grand Rapids, which was the regional shopping center, he was the superintendent of the biggest department store in Grand Rapids, Herbolsheimer's. So always when we went to school, my mother would take us to Grand Rapids to shop for clothes before school started. And we'd always go down there at Christmas, before Christmas, and buy some Christmas presents. Well, but when we went to Grand Rapids, we always went to Herbolsheimer's, and I'm sure my mother would call up and tell Cedric that we were coming. So we'd have lunch at the Herbolsheimer's lunch counter with him, where he was the superintendent for the biggest department store in town, and he had a very good job. He was a very good baseball player. He was in the Navy in Second World War, and he's the kind of person, he had a personality where his job, I'm sure, required this, that he could get along with people. But it was also, it was fun when you were young to spend time around him, because he'd ask you questions and show you stuff and treat you like you could learn something. It would be one of my dad's mother's brothers, an uncle. And so, and then my grandmother, Krogman, lived to be 99. So, and she was, she loved to fish. So she'd always say, well, Morris, won't you go fishing with me? And then Coral had a couple of little lakes, and she just loved to go out there and sit and take a bamboo pole and fish. Cedric's mother lived with Grandma at the end. I mean, until Grandma, she took care of Grandma. So there was a lot of interchange between those people. We probably would see her 5 or 6 or 7 times in a year, and she would, and up until she'd come to Big Rapids and to see her daughter too, and some of the family would come up there to see her, to see my grandma. And I used to go up to Grandma's house. I bet you when I was, up until the time I was 6 or 7, or 10, I probably go up there and sleep overnight with them once a month.